Hello guys, welcome back to another video. So in today's video I'm going to talk about the iPhone 8 in 2023 and if I still think this is a good phone and whether it's worth getting. So it's been 6 years since this phone was released and honestly for its age I still think the iPhone 8 is an extremely usable phone. So I'm going to talk about the features and the specs of the iPhone 8 and how it is to use in 2023 and whether I think it's still worth buying. So yeah, let's get into it. So the iPhone 8 has quite a classic look with its aluminum and glass body. This iPhone was the first iPhone to have a glass back and it is also the first iPhone to introduce wireless charging. So this phone's design is pretty much identical to the iPhone 7 except for the fact that it has the glass back instead of the aluminum back. If you do completely ignore the back and just look at the front of this phone looks identical to an iPhone 6 as they've kept the same design. But although this design is old, it is still being kept modern with the release of the iPhone SE2, which was released in 2020, which uses the exact same design as the iPhone 8, except for the fact that the Apple logo is in the middle of the phone to keep up with the current iPhones. And then there was also the iPhone SE3, which released in 2022, which has the exact same design as the SE2, and that phone has the same design as the iPhone 8. So although this design is really old, it's still being kept modern and this design is still being used in current Apple products. Now in 2023 obviously this design does look quite old compared to newer iPhones, as except for the iPhone SEs, which are the cheaper phones, this phone looks completely different to Apple's newest lineup of phones. But it still has a premium feel to it, especially if you use it without a case with a nice glass back. It is really nice to hold. And obviously by today's standards most people class this as a small phone with it having a 4.7 inch screen, which for a lot of people, there's a lot of people their phone is their main device so they will use it to watch films and that. But I think although a film or YouTube watching experience might not be as good on this phone, it is nice to be able to use a phone that you can like comfortably get to each corner of the screen with just one hand. It's quite nice. Now the iPhone 8 runs on Apple's A11 Bionic chip with 2GB of RAM, which honestly, for how little RAM this phone has, it still runs really well. 2GB of RAM in a PC barely gets you anywhere. Even 4GB of RAM nowadays barely gets you anywhere. But this phone can honestly keep a really good amount of apps just open in the background and it's just a really smooth experience considering how old it is and the fact that you've only got 2GB of RAM. And these specs were sort of impressive at the time. Nowadays, not as much. The A11 chip is obviously nowhere near as powerful as the newer A series chips, which is using obviously like the iPhone 14, 13 stuff, but it's still fast and a reliable phone. The iPhone 8 can handle most tasks really easily and it still runs smoothly even with loads of apps running in the background. The phone still gives you a nice smooth experience. So for a basic user, for someone that just uses their phone for basic stuff like phone calls, messaging, Safari, like Google and stuff, it can still get them by, like really easily. The iPhone 8 has a single 12 megapixel camera on the back and a 7 megapixel front facing camera, which is obviously nowhere good as the sort of details you'd get on the newer iPhones, or say if you compare it to one of the newer Samsungs which can zoom 100 times and get good photos of the moon. Obviously you're not going to get any experience like that. But quite a few of my YouTube videos are actually filmed on this phone and they all look good. It can record video at 4K 60fps and the front facing camera can film at 1080p 68fps. This is video recorded on the iPhone 8's front camera and this is video from the iPhone 8's back camera. See, raining. Although it's not the best camera, it's still really good. And I'm guessing the sort of person that will want to buy and use this phone is probably not a photographer. The main area where, in my opinion, the iPhone 8 just has a massive downfall and can become not usable is its battery life. The iPhone 8 only has a 1821 milliamp hour battery, which is really bad on its own. That is not a large capacity battery at all. But with the iPhone 8 being 6 years old, upcoming 7 years in September, unless your battery has been replaced, or it's a new old stock phone, or it's barely been used, the battery will most likely be extremely degraded, and with it only having a small battery in the first place, this would leave you with not a very good experience. With the phone still working well, but you will not get much life out of it. If you're a really light user, then you might be able to scrape a full day. Say if you only use it for phone calls and don't use it in the sun and stuff, then you'll probably be alright, but it really does depend on your battery health. But with this phone being that old, it's not that difficult to replace the battery if your battery is really degraded. Taking it into a phone shop, depending on where you take it, it could be expensive, it could be quite cheap. But to do it yourself, you could buy yourself a battery quite cheaply and just do it yourself, like I did with my old iPhone 11 battery. Or if you know someone that fixes phones, you might be able to get a discount or whatever. But yeah, so that's one thing. These phones are more difficult to open than the iPhone 6, as this has a waterproof seal and that will need to be put back if the battery has been replaced. But replacing the battery would probably not be that difficult a job on these. Now the iPhone 8 is still fully up to date, running iOS 16. However, at the minute, the iPhone 8 is the oldest iPhone which is still supported on the latest software of iOS 16. We're not sure if it will get iOS 17. There's some rumours around that the iPhone 8 and the iPhone X will drop iOS 17, which full well could happen. Although this phone's on the latest software at the minute, in September, not get the new updates, and then this phone will no longer be supported. However, just because it does not get the most recent iOS updates doesn't mean it's unusable. Most apps will still support older iOS versions for a few years. My main iPad is an iPad Air running iOS 12, and I can still get most apps, although some of them are older versions, but it still works. So especially if you're a light user and don't use that many apps, the fact that the phone's dropping support is probably not the biggest deal. My iPhone 8 that I have here isn't even updated to iOS 16 yet. I still have this on iOS 15, and honestly, I can't even tell the difference between the different versions anymore. Now, in my opinion, I still think the iPhone 8 is a great phone in 2023. It might not have all the features of the newer iPhone models. It's still a really reliable and functional phone, especially considering how old this phone is. And if you're someone that doesn't need the latest and greatest technology, the iPhone 8 can still be a great option for you. It may not have the latest features or the most powerful hardware, but it can handle most tasks you throw at it, especially if you say like an older person who just doesn't need that many features, just needs a phone that can like FaceTime, or if you just need a really cheap way to get yourself into the Apple ecosystem, because as I mentioned earlier, it is still the latest iOS 16. So if you just want to get an iPhone to try it out, which personally I'm an Android user, but I still think this phone is really good. It is my backup phone, so if my phone does ever break, this will become my main. But yeah, if you're on a small budget, these phones can be found really cheap. It is still worth considering, and if you already have one, then you might be able to get away with using it for a few years before you pay loads of money for a new phone. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to make more videos about using older tech in 2023. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys come back for another video. Hope you guys found the video helpful.